What is up, you guys? Welcome back to the Snake Eater Company. I am Jesse, aka Snake Eater, and they are finally here. After months of waiting, we can finally put our hands on the Virpil Constellation Alpha. But first, let's get some things out of the way. The sticks you're going to see today are pre-production models, so they don't have a serial plate on them. That means that they are very close to what you will get from the production line, but the internals, from what Virpil tells me, may be tweaked, maybe, adjusted to be more efficient on the production line. Everything on the outside, though, all the switches, all that stuff, I've been told, is exactly the same as a production model will be. These particular sticks have been provided to me by Virpil for a review so that I can get information into your guys' hands to make the best purchasing decision that you can as quickly as possible. These are very popular sticks. You probably want to know as much as you can about them before you drop a pre-order. So thanks to Virpil. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know that I will always give you guys my honest opinion about a product, no matter how it's come to be in my hands. So let's get to the good stuff. The first space sim driven grip that Virpil offered was called the Constellation Delta. It brought to pilots a lot of practical features that you wouldn't find on a stick or a grip that was created to be a replica of a real aircraft's grip. Things like thumbsticks, mouse wheels, twists, ambidexterity. As with all things that innovate, they oftentimes bring with them unforeseen issues. The Delta was a little big for some hands. It was a bit tall for desktop mounting. And while the ambidexterity allowed use in either hand, it suffered in the ergonomics category. Virpil is not known for waiting very long to iterate or evolve a product, so it was no surprise that before too long, Virpil announced a successor. That successor is the Constellation Alpha. Alright, as usual, let's get the pound of flesh you'll have to give up to get this bad boy out of the way first. The Constellation Alpha goes for €180, which is $195 US. This grip is in extremely high demand. It has already gone through 2 pre-order cycles and it's gearing up for a third. I recommend, if you want to stay in the know about the dates for Virpil's restocking, then you head to their restocking page. I'll leave that in the description below. With so many choices of grip these days, it is important to know which grips are compatible with which bases. So of course, Virpil's grips are all compatible with Virpil's line of bases. They're also compatible with the Thrustmaster Warthog base, but it's important to know that if you put a grip like the Alpha onto the Thrustmaster base, you will not retain the functionality of all the other extra axes that the grip has to offer. Things like the brake lever axis, the thumbstick axis, the mouse scroll wheel axis. All of these things require the Virpil base to work properly. While this grip's design is an evolution of the Delta, its production quality is definitely an evolution in Virpil's overall ability to build a grip. Everything on this grip feels more solid, more clean, more polished than any of the Virpil grips I've had in the past, and I've had a few. It feels to me like Virpil has reached a new refinement level in their production. I own a few grips from Virpil, and while they're all very good build quality in general, this grip is at the next level. The plastics feel very solid and resin-like. There's no hollow feeling to them. The seams are all perfect without any gaps. There is no creaking or squeaking or flex. The grip has a very satisfying weight to it. It's just got a real heft to it. And it just gives you this feeling like what you're paying for, which happens to be the most expensive grip in Virpil's lineup, is worth it. I can't really speak to durability yet. I've only had the grips in my hands and have been using them for a couple weeks now. And obviously, time will tell if anything on it wears down or if it needs to be replaced. But so far, everything has worked perfectly. This grip really feels to me like Virpil has reached a new level in its ability to fulfill its product visions. How does this baby feel? Oh man, this grip. You guys, I really wasn't expecting to like this grip as much as I do. The grip just calls to my hand. It fits it so well. I just find myself constantly grabbing the stick. Even if I'm not flying, I'm just enjoying the way the grip feels in my hand. It feels like it's got some substance to it. It fills my hand very well, and it makes me feel like maybe the ship or aircraft I'm flying has substance too. So one of the criticisms of the Delta grip that came before it is that it was not super comfortable. While it was functional, it didn't take very many cues from real aircraft designs, grips that you might pull out of a real fighter jet. The Alpha, on the other hand, even though it's built to cater to the space sim world, it has a very good amount of aircraft DNA in it, which gives it a feeling of legitimacy, not just a space controller, a video game controller of some kind. It feels kind of like the VFX and an F-18 grip had a baby. There are 0 hot spots on this thing. Everything feels very smooth and curved to fit your hand. There is a very generous back strap on it, which fills out your palm very comfortably. It gives it this feeling of fullness that adds substance to the grip. There's a very nice thumb rest before you get to the thumb hat. There's a really nice cradle for your fingers to wrap into. All of the buttons are really easy to reach no matter what finger you're using to get to them. An important part of the ergonomic picture of a stick is how you plan to mount the thing. Is it on a chair mount? Is it on a desk mount? Or are you putting it on the top of your desk? If you're planning on desk mounting it or chair mounting it, you probably can adjust the height to your liking. But a lot of people like to use it on top of the desk, and some of the Virpil sticks in general can be too tall to comfortably use on the top of your desk. For those of you looking to put this thing on top of your desk, I think you'll be happy with its height if you put it on a Virpil Warbird base. When you put it on the Virpil Warbird base, it comes out to roughly the same height as a Thrustmaster Warthog flight stick on a Thrustmaster base. If you want to mount it to the Mongoose CM2 base, or the CM1 base for that matter, you're going to want to desk mount it or chair mount it. That base is known to be a very tall base, and I think it's probably going to put it a little above the height that you want it to be if you're putting it on top of your desk. Okay, features. I think you guys know where we're starting. The trigger. There is a 2-stage trigger and a flip-down trigger. The flip-down trigger is made out of metal. Like other flip-down triggers, when it's flipped up, that's one activation. When it's flipped down, that's another activation, both of which can be custom mapped. It has a couple of gates that you pass through when you're using it. One is to flip it down. The next is to actually pull it and use it as a trigger. It doesn't really have like an activation response. It's just a small amount of resistance that you pass through to use it. So you won't get a click, you won't get that feeling that you've pressed it, but you generally know because you come into contact with the main 2-stage trigger, which brings us to its trick. When you pull the trigger, you can continue to pull and activate the main trigger. Both stages you can activate through the flip down trigger, which in essence makes it a 3-stage trigger. You could program it so the flip down trigger is the first stage, you pull the first stage of the main trigger as the second stage, third stage. You get the idea. It's an interesting design choice by Virpil, and it'll be really cool to see if people find ways to use it in their games. One thing I will say though is if you have the flip down trigger flip down, there isn't really a whole lot of room between it and the main trigger, so you're not likely to keep it flipped down and comfortably use the main 2-stage trigger. The main trigger is also made out of metal. The first stage is very smooth and activates satisfyingly. It is easier to activate than the Thrustmaster Warthog grip, but triggers can be a thing of preference, and I know people that don't find the Thrustmaster trigger to be easy enough to pull. They get fatigued by it after pressing it thousands of times. So I would say that I prefer the Thrustmaster trigger still, but this is easily the second best trigger out there for me so far. Another feature that sets the Alpha apart from a lot of other grips out there is the thumbstick. It's a stick on top of a stick. It's stickception. It's a 2-axis thumbstick like you'd find on an Xbox controller, and it has a D-press. For some reason, the thumbstick is commonly a feature that is associated with space sim flight sticks, but it has a lot of functionality in flight sims too. It's just not realistic in the sense that you'll find a real flight stick in a real airplane with a thumbstick, but maybe they should have it. The thumb wheel is just like a mouse wheel. It's got a nice rubbery grip to it. It's got nice satisfying clicks as you move up and down, and it's got not one but 2 D-press levels. The first one is easy and satisfying to activate. The second one is kind of difficult to know is there. In fact, I didn't even really know it had 2 D-press levels until somebody asked me about it. So I'm not sure I would use it for something real sensitive because it would be easy to activate accidentally, I think. You've got 2 more momentary buttons up in the thumb area, a red one and a black one, and they are the short travel clicky variety. They have a satisfying clear click when pressed. The one on your pinky is easy to reach. In fact, my pinky tends to rest on it just by default. There is an index two-way hat that has a press as well. The Alpha has 3 4-way uncaged hats with a press, 2 of them up in the thumb area and 1 of them on the low thumb. The brake lever is also made out of metal. It is a programmable axis, but it's spring-loaded, so when you let go of it, it returns to 0. And it can also be programmed to be a switch, although it doesn't have a click or an activation, so you'll just have to keep that in mind when you use it for that. The twist axis has very little resistance. It's very easy to move back and forth and has a pretty short travel, so it's going to be pretty sensitive. You'll probably have to dial back the sensitivity curves a bit on it so that you're not wagging back and forth using it. It can be locked out, but you'll need an Allen wrench that does not come with the grip to do that. Once it's been locked out, I found it to have no play, no wiggle, nothing. It was rock solid as if there wasn't any twist at all. It's got an RGB strip that is sort of like a rubbery, translucent material. It's interesting. You can adjust the colors and the intensity in Virpil's software. They've also improved the shape of the palm rest, and they have added a lockdown washer so that you can remove all shimmy and shake from it. Quick pro tip, if you have one of Virpil's sticks that also has a palm rest, but it rattles, you can go grab one of these nuts and add it to that, and it'll lock that down as well. When you combine its X and Y axis, its Z axis for twist, its thumbstick axes, its mouse wheel axis, its brake lever axis, and all of the buttons, the 3 4-way hats all with press, and the momentary switches, this thing is an absolute Swiss Army knife that I think if you had to choose a single grip to use on all of your flight sims and all of your space sims, it's hard to find a more useful grip than the Alpha. With all the choices out there, I think it's important to offer some contrast with other products because it can be just as difficult to get your hands on some of those products and get a good comparison for decision making. A lot of people are asking, is this grip better than the VKB Cosmosema, which is VKB's space-centric grip? Before I give my personal opinion on that, I want to say that a lot of things go into someone's choice of grip, the base they want to use, their hand size. Have they invested in any of the other hardware from that manufacturer already? Have they gotten into that manufacturer's ecosystem yet? How do you plan to mount the base? Just make sure you take all of these things into account when you're making your decision. But I'm going to give it to you straight. I think that the Virpil Constellation Alpha outstrips the VKB Cosmosema in almost every single category. In sheer functionality, it possesses one more momentary button, two more index actuations, a thumb wheel with two presses, and a brake lever, none of which exists on the Cosmosema. In terms of fit and finish, it is impeccably assembled and extremely comfortable in the hand with no hot spots whatsoever. The thing just begs to be held. And it's nice that it can be used with Thrustmaster's bases, albeit with less functionality than it would have on a Virpil base. Alright guys, what are my final thoughts on this thing? I really think that Virpil has a masterpiece here that is going to make a lot of pilots very happy. The build quality on the two grips that I've gotten to spend time with is impeccable. The ergonomics on the Alpha are just a thing of beauty. It just begs to be held. It calls to your hands. While it is purpose-built to cater to space sim pilots, I really think a lot of aviation sim pilots are going to be happy with this grip. It has a lot of aircraft DNA in it. I myself may find it difficult to swap it out for an aviation-centric grip just because it's so comfortable and so functional. Why take it off the base? What would I like to see improved upon in the next Alpha build? Maybe the ability to not have the RGB strip at order so that it comes just as one solid black piece and you don't have that feeling like there's an RGB strip on it. I could also probably do without the faux panels and the faux nuts in the thumb section. I mean, we're stretching here, gang. There is almost nothing I don't like about this grip, which is pretty rare. I have been very impressed by the Constellation Alpha. It is the perfect grip for space sim pilots, and while not a replica of any real-world grips, offers a very good experience for aviation sim pilots as well. Okay, that does it for this review. Thank you for watching, you guys. Your likes and subscriptions help the channel out a ton. If you have any questions that I didn't answer in the review, just toss them in the comment section below and I will do my best to get to them as quickly as I can. We've got more videos coming for you guys very soon, so make sure you come back often to see what we've got going on here at the Snake Eater Company. Later, guys.